Yeah, I guess we can just jump right into it. My name is Micah Gallagher, and I'm so glad to be presenting for you tonight. And
I'm Vanessa Luviano. Okay, I guess we can go ahead and get started. Click on the presentation. Oh, there you go.
oh, sorry.
Sorry, guys, technical difficulties here. So, as I mentioned, my name is Vanessa Luviano, and I'm coming from East Texas A&M University, and I'm majoring in wildlife conservation, and I'm actually in the biology track. I'm also part of the Honors College and the McNair Scholars, and I am also going to be doing an undergraduate thesis. My thesis is going to be over ectoparasite presence patterns in San Clemente Island foxes. And I am actually doing an internship here at Bandelier, and in the in the future this summer, I'm going to actually be going to San Clemente Island for the thesis research that I will be doing, and that's going to be with Institute for Wildlife Studies. And I'm actually also a student instructor at ETMU. And in these pictures, you can see that I love Minecraft, which is actually applicable to this presentation, and I will explain that later in the presentation. So I'm actually trying to collect all of the Minecraft collectibles plushie-wise. So here you can see the fox and the creeper, the Enderman, the little bee, and I think that's all the ones that I have so far. But I'll let Micah go ahead and introduce herself.
She really does have like the best collection. It's awesome. So on my slide, you're gonna see some pretty similar bullet points to Vanessa's. For some reason, we're living like a double life, quite literally. But yeah, I also go to East Texas A&M. Whoop, go Lions. We have big lion pride down there, and I'm so sorry, but we are unapologetically Texan. But yeah, I'm also pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Wildlife Conservation. I've loved it so far, and I hope to continue down that track. I'm also in the Honors College with Vanessa. They're a really great resource of people, just a really good network. They're good at community building and everything like that. They have really given us a really good college experience. So through the Honors College, I am also doing an undergrad thesis, and so that's what I'm gonna yap your ear off about tonight for the first half of this presentation. But my thesis is over elk migration, specifically in northern New Mexico, and really I'm like focusing on the herd in the Jemez Mountains. So you've probably seen them all over the place. But yeah, I am also a wildlife intern at Bandelier under Sarah Milligan, who I think is in the chat right now. She's awesome. If you ever get the chance to meet her, then definitely go and spend some time with her. She is really great. She also has done some presentations here, so y'all in the audience might know her, maybe. But yeah, I've been under her for the past 8 weeks. This is actually, we're wrapping it up this week, so we'll be heading back to Texas and back to our home state. My background is in ag. I work for the farm and ranch back at East Texas A&M University, and so I really like that intersection between ag and wildlife. So this has been a really great opportunity for me to like kind of see what that looks like in the field on the wildlife side of it because I've done a lot of ag. Yeah, so my pictures, that's my family over here, my support system from back home. I owe everything to them. My parents and my grandpa right there, and grandparents, my sister Morgan and Kobe, my brother-in-law. They're all great. They've very much instilled like a love for wildlife and the outdoors in me. And so you can thank them for me being here yapping your ear off. Yeah, and then that's my puppy Sadie back home. She's a great girl. She was a Houston mutt, a pity mix. So she's great. Loves smelling the flowers, as you can tell. I'm hugging my sister right there, in Lake City, Colorado, our favorite place to be. So the aspens are really pretty if y'all are leaf peepers, maybe. I've heard that the foliage right here is like really good with all of your aspens and the box alders and everything. And the other dog right there is Jake. He's a rough collie, and if you've ever seen Lassie, then that's that's the kind of dog he is. He's really sweet, and he's khaki colored, of course, so he's got to be Jake from State Farm, if anybody remembers that commercial. But yeah, now that I've yapped about myself enough, then we can go ahead and get into it. So, how did we end up at Bandelier? So, I guess we can just start about where exactly we got our ideas for our thesis. Um, our university is really great and offers a lot of good curriculum for supporting their students in whatever they assign them. And so, since we stepped into the thesis track, then they gave us a course for thesis brainstorming and kind of like sent us out of the nest, if you will, like fledgling. So that was great. We were actually in that course together, yet another thing we share, a list of many. But yeah, we just kind of went through that course. I specifically, I was really just looking at anything wildlife. They let you choose whatever you want, whatever interests you, which is amazing. It doesn't have to correspond with your major, but we just happened to pick wildlife because that's our passion and we really love it. And we knew that we needed to pick something that we could stick with for like quite a while and not get tired of. So, like I said earlier, I have some family up in Lake City, Colorado, and so we do a lot of wildlife watching up there. A lot of driving around, trying to find anything, and it was always like a super big thing whenever anybody spotted elk because they're pretty elusive up there. I know here they're pretty friendly, like you can pretty much see them wherever you go. But yeah, up there it was pretty rare to see an elk, and so it was always a big thing. So it was a really special thing in my family to go like see some elk. Like we weren't hunters, like we do fish and everything, but like wildlife watching is one of our big things. And so they really intrigued me. And so basically, I was like, okay, this is what I've got to do. Just something with elk, like something with ungulates specifically, because as I said, my background is in agriculture. So a lot of cattle, a lot of herd-like animals. I've been called a herd nerd because of my elk and cattle studies. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got on mine. And then Vanessa can tell you how she got to hers.
Let's see. So for me, it also started with that thesis seminar course, and they basically gave us these worksheets so that we could like plan and brainstorm the ideas. And so I also knew that I wanted to do something in wildlife, hence my major. And so I just started to look into the different things that I found really interesting. And animal diseases and parasites, they're so interesting to me. So that was one of my little circles in there. And then the other thing was mating preferences. And so I actually read an article for one of my courses on how they were conducting a research on how mice were being influenced by what they were being fed and how that influenced their mating preferences. And so basically what they found is that the female mice would prefer the male mice who were actually being fed the same food as they were. And so I thought that was really interesting. And I was like, how do you think animal diseases would influence mating preferences? And so that was basically my question. And then I started to see what animal would I like to work with. And I didn't really see myself working with farm animals, though I do love horses. I didn't see myself working with apex predators, though they are really cool. And so then I stumbled upon foxes. They're really cool guys, and they're really interesting, and they're also really cute. And so I was like, okay, foxes that we have in Texas, gray foxes. And so then I started to look into the different animal diseases. And so I came upon distemper. And so then I was like, okay, how does distemper affect mating preferences in gray foxes or foxes in general? And so later on, I guess I'll tell you in my second or third bullet point here on this slide. But later on, I discovered that that was more of a master's thesis, which is a good thing to keep in mind because I do want to pursue my master's and then my PhD. So, um, according to how my internship in San Clemente goes, I might be going that route. So, then I was offered the project on ectoparasite presence patterns in San Clemente Island foxes. And so parasites, like I said, are very interesting to me. So that was like a perfect fit. And so I guess then we can talk about our thesis advisor. Um, he has been a great help to us. So we had our idea for our thesis, and so now we had to see how we were actually going to make this happen. And so Micah actually helped me in my scavenger hunt for a thesis advisor. So I'm part of the Honors College and the McNair Scholar. So I was required to have a mentor for both of those. And so then I started to look into the different instructors and just like staff in at ETMU, and I was like having a little bit of difficulty finding someone. And then Dr. D, which I work with and part of the McNair Scholars, she suggested Dr. Chiparia, and then I also found out from Micah that he had previously worked with foxes, and so that was like perfect. And so then I set up a meeting with him, and I went in there and I was like, okay, I want to study how animal diseases, how specifically distemper affects foxes and their mating preferences. And then from there, he pulled up like a whole contact list and he was like, okay, like which route do you want to go? And so then that's where we reached out to the Institute for Wildlife Studies in San Clemente Island. And that's basically how I got my internship there that I will be going to later this summer. Um, but yes, Dr. Chiveria has been a great help and a great support, and so has Dr. D. And I guess I can hand it over to you, Micah.
Yeah, Dr. Chavarria definitely gets a 5-star review on Yelp. He has been awesome. Would recommend, as I did. Yeah, so my thesis advisor, no shock here, is also Dr. Chavarria. So I had had some classes with him. I'm in the wildlife program, as I mentioned. And so I got to see him teach and I got to see his huge heart for students. And so I was like, yeah, I think that's somebody that I want to be under. He really puts a lot of time and effort into all of the projects that he opens. And so, and obviously he knows what he's doing for sure. So, I basically went to him and I got him on the hook. I was like, "Hey, how would you feel about being a thesis advisor for like an undergrad thesis?" And he was like, "Oh yeah," he was on board right away. And then I popped the question on him, "How do you feel about elk?" Because we're in Texas, you know? And so, I still remember this conversation. I was like, listen, this is like my dream project. I understand if it's not attainable, but like I would really love to work with elk. But if not, I have a whole bunch of like other backup options. Like I was ready for him to say no. But basically, he just, I still remember his answer. He was like, Micah, there are no elk in Texas unless you want to be on a game ranch. So, but he was like, wait, hold on. Let me like pull out my Rolodex, I'm sure. And so he made some calls and pulled out all of his connections. And he knew somebody at the Caldera, Steve Zanoni, great guy. I got to work with him a lot over that semester, just trying to coordinate and like work out the logistics of how I might get here. He's been a super great support and he was really welcoming to me. And that's pretty much the theme that I've had so far coming to Los Alamos, just a super welcoming community, especially in like academia, which I was really pleasantly surprised to find. Research is such a hard field to be in, and so I was really like honored, I guess, to be adopted by so many people. But yeah, he pulled up Steve Zanoni's name, and he also had a contact at New Mexico State University, Dr. James Kane, and he connected me with him. He's been doing research on elk for a long time, a lot longer than I have, and so they kind of just like took me under their wing. And so it was a really good situation to be in. And so after that, we kind of started looking at funding because like now you have this great opportunity in front of you, but you have the big question, how do you make it happen realistically? And so he pulled out his Rolodex again, good old Chavaria, and he had a friend of a friend of a friend who had a connection at A&M, and they were doing this really cool funding source. It was through the USDA and the subset of that, the NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation uh, uh, maybe sciences system. I'm not for sure. But yeah, so we got into that program, we applied and everything, really hoping, and we ended up getting in. So it's been really great working with them so far. They've put on a whole bunch of cohort like retreats and like events for us to come to, and really they were kind of the same story as like Pedro Chavarria. They just really poured into their students, and I don't know, the slogan on that specific program was kind of like investing in our future. The program was specifically to fund a 10-week internship for students in wildlife or ag, and to just get them into the field, to get that field rolling again. And so I really value what they do. They've poured into us a lot, super attentive on any questions or anything that we have. And so we found yet another great support system there. I can only brag on them. Actually, I guess in the words of my grandpa, I can't brag on them enough. But yeah, so once we came in with the funding, then things started rolling a lot smoother. We also found support from our honors college back home, which was great. I mean, this college that we had invested in, like we saw it investing back in us, and so we really valued that too. That's actually why I went to East Texas A&M. I found people that would invest in me and that poured into me a lot and really cared about its students. And so I'm blessed to have found that, and it seems to be a theme in my time here. But Vanessa is pretty much the same journey, but a little bit of a different flavors. I'll let her explain that.
Let's see. So I've been talking about San Clemente Island, which is all the way in California, well, south, one of the Channel Islands near San Diego. So how do I get there from, how do I get here from there? So basically, as Micah mentioned, the requirement was a 10-week summer internship. And I'm going to be spending 4 weeks, I guess down there. Yeah, 4 weeks down there in San Clemente Island. And so basically, Dr. Chavarria and Micah mentioned me joining her on her internship and basically being adopted by the folks that she was going to be working with. And so basically the huge part of how I ended up at Bandelier was the requirement, and I'm honestly really glad that I did end up here. It's been a great experience, great people, and I guess we'll talk about that later in the presentation, but it's been amazing here. So thank you, Micah, for inviting me. Let's see. Okay, so now we have the funding, and so yeah, and so that's basically how I was adopted by Bandelier. Um, they basically took in extra hands, and that was very sweet of them, especially since my research was going to be somewhere else. So I am really thankful for just the opportunity to be here and like to have grown and like gain other skills that are actually going to be very beneficial for my time down there in San Clemente Island.
Yeah, so my being adopted by Bandelier was like kind of a similar story to yours too. As I mentioned earlier, I was going to be doing my research in the caldera, and that's who I was originally like brought on board by. But some things shifted around, and then I was kind of up in the air, like who's going to adopt this like intern, who's going to babysit the kid in the field. And so Sarah Milligan, who is still in the audience, I think, she saw my name and grabbed me up, and I am so blessed that that happened for sure. She has been nothing but kind and the best supervisor so far. So, yeah, that's kind of how I got adopted by Bandelier. She really took initiative and stepped up to the plate, and so I'm so glad that she did, especially because like my research would be in the caldera still. Um, and specifically on the fence lines in the caldera, as I'm sure you might know because you're locals here. Um, there have been fence line removals for the past 5 years. They've taken out about 77 miles of fences, and so they wanted some work done on that to see like what the cause and effect was with that. So I guess that's a little bit of a sneak preview of what we're gonna jump into here. But yeah, now's the time when you're going to get sick of my voice. So I'm so sorry. I'll try and get through this as quick as I can. So I'm probably going to nerd out on my elk migration study for a second, but I hope that's all right with everyone. So, yeah, this is an undergrad thesis. My very first time doing like real research besides like lit reviews and like lab reports and stuff like that. And so, luckily, I have had nothing but support from everywhere I've gone. And if any of you are scientists. I kind of strongly believe that everyone's a little bit of a scientist, but if any of y'all have experience and like want to share any insight, I am more than like open to hearing whatever you have to say about this. Yeah, so I guess we should start with the data, right? What are we starting from? So James Kane, that name that I mentioned earlier, he was so generous in offering me his data that he had been collecting for the past decade, over a decade. He has done some really interesting studies on mammals specifically and their movement. I know he's captured and collared bears and mountain lions. Let's see what else. And obviously elk. Yeah, so he had one cohort of elk, 40 to be specific. Um, from 2012 to 2018. And so that's the data set that I'm working with right now because he was so generous to like let me use it. He's been great to work with so far. And so I kind of just like jumped onto that data and I was going to see where it took me. So now that we have the movement data for elk, we got to see like what that corresponds to fence wise. So then you need some sort of fence data, right? Like we got to know where the fences are. We got to know like what they're doing, when they're taken out. And so luckily, Sarah introduced me to Mark Payton, a PhD candidate right here in Los Alamos. I think also with New Mexico State University, he has been nothing but welcoming as well. And he does a lot of work with mountain lions and whatnot, and has been closely associated with the Valle Caldera for a long time. And so he had this amazing fence shapefile. And this is just part of it, what I'm showing on screen right now. So this is the Valle Caldera. And along with these like removed fences and current fences, there were also like man-made barriers in there, like all sorts of things, like down to like gas lines and telephone poles. Very super specific. I could not be more grateful for this information, but he so willingly shared it, and it really got the ball rolling on my thesis. So if you look here in the middle, I hope you can see it right here. The purple lines are all past fence lines that have since been removed since that big effort to take them out, largely by volunteer groups, might I add. So thank you to the people of Los Alamos and the Jemez and the surrounding area. That has been awesome. They have removed about 77 miles of fences total within a 5-year period since 2020. So that's what you see there. A lot of interior fences. And then the orange on the outside are the current fences. So, as you probably know, New Mexico is a fence out state. So, that means that even national parks need to fence out other cattle from getting on their place. And so that's what those orange lines are. And that's also what I've been ground truthing for a long time. So, I think I know these fence lines somewhat well by now in the 8 weeks that I've been here. But yeah, so that pretty much covers like what data I was working with from outside sources, very trusted, reputable, credible sources. But every good scientist knows that you got to ground truth, you got to verify whatever you have. And so that's pretty much what I got into whenever I got here. I had a plan to, first of all, ground truth the movement data that Dr. Kane shared with me. So two of my goals in my ground truthing was to verify, and then the other one was to add on to the data that I had through observation and just anything else that I could see, like that I couldn't see on a screen, you know? So, for ground truthing the movement data, I created an ethogram. And so that ethogram was taught to me by Pedro Chavarria. He's obviously a good professor if I'm using his tactics in the field. But basically, it's like a categorized behavior list, if that makes sense. I was using it largely for location, but also behavior for sure, to note any like ecological changes or advantages of certain areas. Lots went into this ethogram. Um, this was probably like the most boots on the ground thing I did, following elk herds and whatnot for my past few weeks here. Yeah, but time, date, location, all those specifics. I'm obsessed with this app called Gaia. It's amazing. You don't have to have service to use it. It allowed me to get out in the field, and you can drop very precise coordinate points with it. So I really appreciated that tool. So yeah, that's how I ground truthed the movement data. And then oh yeah, here's an example of just like some of the data that I've been collecting. So basically, as you can tell, it's like on a phone notes app, but just writing down any information that I could about the site where I saw them, and just a lot of following around elk herds and seeing where they're at and if it lines up with where the movement data said that they would be. And for the most part, it definitely did. Spoiler alert. I guess oh yeah, you might see some odd like abbreviations underneath behavior. So that are those are behavior keys. And so there is a legend that goes along with this. And so I was also just looking for behavior to see if it would influence migration in any ways because elk are on a very specific timetable. Their physiology allows them to do different things in different seasons, and so I wanted to make sure that that was all adding up to and nothing like odd was going on. So, like cross means crossing any like man-made barriers. So that could have been a fence, it could have been a highway. Lots of highway crossings in my time here, for sure. Stat just means stationary. They were just standing, probably looking right at me because I'm not that discreet and they can see me from a mile away. But yeah, that's kind of what those meant. And then, of course, taking down any ecological notes that I could, especially like a good point that was made to me the other day was deadfall in these regions where I was seeing them because that affects forage a lot. So, yeah, and of course, like temperature, any climate conditions that might be important. Yeah, and so through my time here, I got to see a lot of cool sights. Like I said earlier, elk are pretty elusive in the San Juans. You don't get to see a lot of them, so this project has been super special to me. I've gotten to see pe or things like this guy out at night. Actually, this picture came from whenever me and Vanessa were doing a survey out in White Rock. Oh my goodness, at ungodly hours in the morning. And we saw this huge guy. And he was so cool to see. I've recently learned that their racks can grow up to 1 inch a day, which is like insane. White-tailed deer only grow like a quarter inch at max a day. And so right now, especially during the summer, whenever they're in velvet, they are growing like crazy, just preparing for that rut season in the fall. So that's been super cool to see, especially like through my time here. Like even now, like I'm sure I've seen the same one over and over again and just didn't know it, but like every day racks are getting bigger and it's really cool to see in real time. But yeah, he was super cool to see. So the other ground truthing I did was fence walks. So I'm gonna take you back to my two goals in ground truthing, and that is to verify the data that I already have, and also to, I guess you could call, if any of y'all are sports fans, to stat pad to get a little bit more data and just solidify like the science that I was doing to hopefully have good methodology. So basically, my fence walks were exactly what they sound like, walking fences. So these are just some pads that I took along these fence lines near and around the caldera. All of these are perimeter fences, and so it makes sense because all of the ones that were removed were interior fences. So this was basically just looking for evidence of crossing and also like the state of the fence, I guess is the best way to say it. And also just to make sure that the fence was there in general. So to verify that the fence was there because what looks like a straight line on here could be broken up by fences. It could be like a little to the left, a little to the right, all of those different things. It's not just a consistent straight line. Fencing is very different, especially with the refencing that they've been doing. So it was just kind of to get a better feel of that. All of these were randomized so that I could get like a good sample size and not have like any specific site like gone over a whole bunch. But yeah. So for crossing, I was looking at just any evidence of elk in the area that like pretty clearly indicated that they were going over the fence. So if you see like hair on a fence, that's a pretty good indicator that they're going over the fence, especially if you can identify it as elk hair. Another one would be like scat under the fence, because how else would it get under the fence, you know? And a big one that I saw was elk trails. Those were really helpful because it's crazy how much you can see behavior in the signs that wildlife leave behind. But you would see like a trail running along the fence, and then you would see like a huge, like churned up spot on the other side where they would land. Yeah, elk are not shy in how much dirt they turn up. They will make a mud hole for sure. Yeah, they're great. They kind of remind me of cattle in that way. But yeah, and then also just noting down repaired stretches or ones that had like been fallen on by trees, anything like that, or even cut fences in some places, which was kind of crazy to see. Here are just some examples of that. That's what elk hair looks like on a fence. Usually I would just see like a couple strands, and so that was a really good example of that. And then it's kind of hard to see on this one. I'm not sure if y'all can, but on this big one with the ponderosa, there are fence posts on either side. And so that huge ponderosa is just directly across the barbed wire, completely making it accessible to any animals that might want to come through. I'm not sure if you can see it in this picture, but usually whenever you find places like this, if there is high density elk traffic, then you can see there are trails going right alongside the big old ponderosa, you know? So that's just another evidence of how much like deadfall can affect their migration as well. Um, so now we get into the data analysis, which is the stage I'm in right now. This is an unfinished thesis so far, and so it's still in the works. And so this is the stage that I'm in. So for ground truthing, basically what I'm doing with that information is I'm overlaying whatever ground truth data or observation I have and laying it over what movement data or what fence shapefile I have in order to see if it matches up, if it makes sense, pretty much, just to use some common sense in my dad's language. I hope you heard that in the chat. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing with the ground truthing and what I have been doing so far, which I'll get to in just a second. And then the next step after that is to find density correspondence to see where exactly they are crossing, if they are crossing fences very much, and how that's affected by the removal of fences in the past couple years. So, like I said earlier, just to keep in mind for the rest of the presentation, the cohort data that I have so far is all the way up to 2018, but the fence removal started at 2020. And so right now I don't have the data to complete or round out this study, I guess, but it's on the way for sure because there was a cohort collared in 2021. And so that's what I plan to use to see what they were doing after the fences were removed. Um, yeah, so that will go through a whole bunch of processing. Right now, I'm u using QGIS just to like make some maps and like get a feel for it and get some overall like before and afters. But later, I'll be using R to actually crunch the numbers and see percentages of how much this has affected their movement. But yeah, I am becoming more and more aware of how many contributing factors, just like in any study in wildlife, you don't have a controlled environment. And so you have to look at all of the ecological variables that you can. So there have definitely been a lot. Predator presence for sure. Y'all have a lot of great predators here, specifically mountain lions and bears. I've heard of wolves in the region, possibly. You're bordered on both sides by two different populations. Um, None so far that I've seen in any elk kills, but and you know, they really say the coyotes go after the calves. I haven't seen them be successful yet, but man, they're sure trying. But yeah, or changes to the landscape. Y'all have an ever-changing landscape. This is a super cool place that's undergone a lot of wildfires and therefore landslides and therefore floods. So lots of changing conditions for elk to try to navigate through. And then finally, forage availability. And this is like a very short list of a very long expanded list, if you know what I mean, because there are just a million things that alter whether elk move or not. But specifically forage availability, that could be influenced by rainfall or especially snowpack, which I will get to in just a second. But yeah, that's kind of the place that I'm in right now. So this is just kind of an example of how I'm ground truthing my movement data right now. So I'm not sure if y'all can see this super well, but the yellow is where I have observed them just in like the past couple months. And the other colors are those are basically the data points from the movement data that I have in those same months. So May and June, different year. And so this is an example of 2013. And so basically what my data analysis has been so far while I'm here in my off hours, whenever I'm not in Bandelier, has just been going through the years and seeing like if they match up at all. And so for this one, looks like it adds up pretty good, except for you see these like little outliers on the sides coming towards Los Alamos. Um, those can always be compared to the other movement data that I have to see if that's a new trend that we're looking at or if it's just like an anomaly of this year. So for right now, it's all adding up. It's good data, and I wasn't surprised by that because it was taken by a very good researcher. So I'm so sorry. My Carter, my boyfriend at home said that this looks like a blood splatter. I thought that red would show the best on here, but now that he said that, I definitely see it. Yeah, so this heat density map, and so the darker colors show where there has been the highest elk traffic, and the lighter colors obviously show where there's less elk traffic. And so this overlaid with the fence shape file I have has shown some spots where maybe there's less elk traffic because of fences, potentially. Um, as I mentioned before, there were 77 miles of fences taken out in the past 5 years. Um, and so the next step is to just crunch the numbers to see if these shapes that I'm seeing on here are actually um, anything of importance. So basically, what shapes I'm looking for, it's kind of like a meteorologist, I feel like a little bit. But you're just looking for anywhere that you can see the population is like butting up against these fence lines, and it's not really on the other side. So that means they're not crossing the fence right there, or just not getting next to it at all, kind of like on this little one right here. But right here, this might be a corridor where they're getting blocked off from because of that fence line. Or on these exterior fences right here, like that's a pretty crisp, concise line right there where they're not crossing. Even right here, like you can see them coming in maybe from a different side right here, but this fence line, they were not crossing. Um, but all of that is speculative until I crunch the numbers. But that's just some of like the preliminary analysis that I've been doing so far. Yeah, but as I mentioned, snowpack is a super researched side of elk migration. There have been multiple very influential studies on it so far. These are just two that I've cherry picked just to cite for you today. But Sweeney in 1984, he had a really great study along with his colleagues about how snowpack, if it's more than 40 inches or 40 centimeters, excuse me, elk don't really like to move through it, especially with their elk calves. I guess by the winter they would be pretty up and grown, but um, same difference. I mean, they can't effectively forage whenever there's so much snowpack, and that's a big trigger of why they migrate. And so, a much more recent study by Rick Beal and his associates was conducted up in Yosemite, and they had a huge sample size. Like I'm talking lots and lots of herds. And they pretty concisely found that elk migration is plastic. It has many factors that go into it. One of the most influential, though, being snowpack and hunting. And so we do have some hunting here in the caldera on these elk's turf. And so I'll also be looking into that. But especially at snowpack, I found it interesting that that was something that kept on popping up. And so I'm looking at it as a possible factor now. Now I'm kind of like turning my thesis on its head a little bit, or at least 90 degrees, and looking in this direction, specifically through the guidance of Dr. Bob Parmenter. He was in relation with the caldera for a long time. He's a big supporter of research and also just like really pours into any researcher that comes near him. Dr. Chavarria knew him from a long time ago, and so through both of their guidance and suggestion, I've kind of pivoted my study a little bit this way to see what these two factors can do when in conjunction with each other. I haven't done any analysis on it yet, but I do have two data sources, and those are snowtells, which means snow telemetry models. And thankfully, they have already been set up in the caldera and are just ready and waiting to be used. These are also open to the public, so just get in your little search engine and look up snowtells in the Valle Caldera, and they can give you all sorts of data to use. There's 2 points specifically in the caldera, so that is La Garita Peak right here and the Camazon site right over here. And so basically what snowtells do is they measure snowpack for that area. And so what I would be doing with this information is just doing another overlay, seeing how it corresponds to the elk migration in that region year to year and how snowpack affects how they move. So I think that pretty much covers all of that. Are there any questions before I move on? Oh, okay. Wow, that was enthusiastic. Good. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. I have not specifically factored it. Oh, sorry, what? Oh, sorry. The question was, Have you looked at fence structure, maybe, and also height? Yeah, what it's composed of and how big it is. I haven't been taking down notes on that, but that's a really good point. I know specifically on the eastern side, were you on the southeastern border? Like in that corner? Okay, gotcha. Okay. I haven't been up there, but I do know that that area specifically is super high in elk traffic thanks to the data that I have. And so it would make sense for there to be more substantial fencing over there where they see bigger elk migration. So that's really interesting too. Maybe I'll have to head out over there. A lot of my study has been on the western side. And so, yeah, I have been taking pictures wherever I go. So maybe through a little bit of forensic analysis. Okay, perfect. That sounds great. Um,
We
does
have
that
another
answer your question? Okay, perfect.
we have another question from online asking how big are the herds that you studied?
So actually the herd in the Hemis is really interesting. It is one huge herd, of over 1,000, multiple thousand. But the elk herds that I see daily are between, they could be anywhere from like five to I've seen them up to 150. So this specific elk herd, they're not like caribou. They don't all move at once. There are little pockets of them that move independently. And it kind of makes sense with their seasonal behavior because as you probably know, bulls separate off from the herd whenever they're getting all big and strong. They get kind of chummy with each other. They're hanging out with other bulls around this time, and they're growing as much as they can for that rut season that comes in the fall. And then they separate off into their harems. And so, yeah, it kind of varies. Like the ones that I'm following, like it's different day to day. I try and go and see all the elk so that they all feel special. Yeah.
So the foods that you have in your Okay, I guess I can't say the question. So I have a question for you, Micah. So the behavior codes that you showed on your entogram, are those just typical behaviors that you would see in the elk?
Yes. So as you could see, there was no sparring codes on any of the ones that I have so far. So I did create a legend of just typical elk behaviors like throughout the year and everything, but that was also a big way to verify that they weren't doing any sort of like weird mating behavior like out of season for sure. Um, let's see, does that answer your question? Okay, sweet. Yes, sir. Yes, I did. So it was largely by opportunity, working a 9 to 5, but we also had lots of half days. And so I tried to spread it out as much as I could. Um, Unfortunately, there was like more of like not a bell curve, like a concave time where I would go more in the mornings and the evenings just because that was the time available. But yes, there are plenty of afternoon sightings and things in there, and also ones at 3 a.m. So there's a good spread in there, but not specifically randomized. But does that answer your question? That's true. Yes, for sure. So that is yet another factor. Oh, sorry, I need to repeat the question. The question was, will you be looking at any funding to come up here and see the elk whenever and observe the elk whenever they're not constantly being interacted with by humans because of the tourist season? And I haven't currently looked into that. This is just like the constraints available right now, but that's also a good point. That's yet another factor that needs to be. That's exactly why wildlife work like is so overarching. Like you go into so many different areas of study here. Um, that's not currently in the works, but it's always a good thing to keep in mind. And like I said earlier, the other contributing factors. Ooh, let me go back. Ooh, ooh. The other contributing factors, there will be a whole section in this thesis about that and all of the variation that I'm probably not seeing because there's a lot of different things to study while you're here. And also, I'm gonna pull the undergrad thesis card. But does that answer your question? Okay, perfect. Okay. So I guess, oh wait, any other questions before I move on? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so now we get to talk about our internship here at Bandelier, which y'all actually signed up for, and not to hear me like nerd out about my micro obsession for these like past couple months. But yeah, now we can jump into our time here at Bandelier and what it's been like. Okay, so once we got into New Mexico, I've driven through New Mexico a couple of times before, but this was my first time actually being in New Mexico. And let me tell you, I fell in love with northern New Mexico whenever I got here. It was great. It just grew on me more and more every day. I love the landscape, I love the people, and I especially love the green and red chilies. They've been awesome so far. Yeah, were immediately met with like great hospitality, just great people in general. And we are so lucky to be here, to be so honest. But I guess I'll hand the mic over to Vanessa to see her point of view on this.
Let's see. So my point of view, so I haven't done much traveling in my life. This summer is actually the most traveling that I've done in my life. So I agree with Micah. Just the scenery here was very beautiful. Not when I got out of the airport, but when I was like actually on the car and I could see the outside. That was very beautiful. And so as you can see there from my POV, I just wanted to like grow into like giant size and like hug a canyon or like just shrink myself and like go into like those like small little caves and like just explore the canyons. Like it's just very beautiful. And I agree. Just like people here, just very sweet, very nice. And yeah, we also got to see the stars. I'm a huge star fan. I love just watching the night sky and like looking at the stars and yeah, it's been great.
And I guess just to come back to your question, whenever you ask, like, are you going to come back and like revisit whenever it's not tourist season? These green and red chilies are going to make me come back in the fall for sure. Whenever I say my family buys them by the bushel, I am not lying. We love them all times of the year. So I guess we can just jump into my first day if y'all are okay with that. So I got here on May 12th and I was really happy to be here. It was like from college, final exams, like straight to here. And man, that was such a breath of fresh air, literally and figuratively. It was awesome. So, most of my bullet points on here are of the people that I met here on my first day, and really, they made the biggest impact on me for sure. Just bringing in the welcoming committee for sure. But whenever we drove up to Bandelier, we were at the entrance station and we got to meet Ranger Tim for the first time. We had no Bandelier sticker and we were like, we just need to get in to like get my house key. And he was my very first impression of the national park system here. And I just want to brag on Ranger Tim. He was the best example of that. So welcoming and just immediately like friendly and really embodies the spirit of what it means to be a ranger. And so I was super happy to meet him. And immediately he was like, "Where are my Krispy Kremes? I thought you were supposed to bring them." And so I hope he's not in the chat right now. Can we confirm? No Tims? Okay, there we go. So it's definitely in the works to get him some Krispy Kremes by the end of this week. So he's on my list. The very next person I interacted with was Anna, our botanist. I drove up, pulled up into a parking spot, and I got out and I was like, man, I'm supposed to meet somebody here. Her name is Anna. I have no idea who this is. And so I just walked up to the very first woman I met. She was actually faced away from me. I said, "Hi, are you Anna?" And she turned around and both hands were just full of cheatgrass. Like she was making a hay bale for sure. It was wild. And I was like, or she was like, "Yeah, I'm Anna. Like I'm the botanist here," and immediately started showing me around. Also a great welcoming party. She was great. And gave me a good impression of what it was going to be like this summer. No cheatgrass for sure. It's an invasive species to this region, and she is very, very enthusiastic about getting rid of them, to say the least. And that has only ramped up since then. She's great. Always working very hard at her job. So, then Sarah picked me up and we started our whirlwind tour of Bandelier all at once. Cassie was our next stop at HR. She got me onboarded and everything. Super quick, super easy, the best, especially for being like a government job where you need all of your credentials and you need to be background checked. Like all of it went very smooth and they're just great with their seasonals and their interns, like getting people in and moving things along very quickly and also making you feel at home. So I figured out that Cassie was part of the party planning committee. As far as I know, it's like a party planning committee of two. So she was on it though. She was like, from the moment I stepped in the door, she was like, "Hey, we have a get together going on. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yes, I do. This is my type of place." So she was amazing from the start. Immediately, like included me, like took me into the family. Another theme of adoption. So yeah, that was Cassie. And then we went to go meet Bob the Hummingbird Bander. He has been a super influential guy while I've been here. You probably know him in the audience. He's a pretty big pillar here in the Los Alamos community. He's awesome. He gave me the rundown on all the hummingbirds here and the research that he's been doing. Another whirlwind tour that I cannot be more grateful for. The most interactive presentation I've ever been in. Way better than this one, I will say. But super engaging. And also, he's just the most interesting guy I've ever met. I was like, wow, this guy's been like knighted by like an emperor of Japan. Like he's been on all of these like crazy like tours across Europe and everything. So yeah, he was super cool to meet and also just like caught my interest like from the very beginning. I was like, okay, I guess the rest of this summer is going to be figuring out Bob and like his story. And it's a super interesting story. Definitely talk to him if you ever get the chance to. Yeah, so the next step was Sarah dressing me to the nines. That's a saying in Texas. I'm sure that you hear it too here too. But she really kitted me out for this field season. Before I came here, I was emailing back and forth like, what do I need to bring? Like, what are all the equipment that I need to like fulfill like what you want me to do here? And she was basically like, don't worry, I got it covered. And so we got this cool merch with Bandelier. Uh, our audience just got a show of our merch and y'all didn't, so that's what you get for not coming in person. But yeah, she equipped us really well for our job and gave us all the tools that we needed to do it, especially equipment, because that's a big thing here. Lots of field equipment because lots of field work. Nothing to complain about. The next stop was Jorge has got the hookup in housing. That is a tongue twister. I dare you to say that 5 times fast. He was great. He also onboarded me into housing, and man, I was really bracing for park housing because I'd heard all the horror stories, like hantavirus, like lead paint on the walls and everything. But whenever I got here, it was like I didn't think I had the right house. I was like, wow, this is just so nice. And like, I have two landlords, Jorge and Jeff, and both of them are super just understanding and they know what it's like to be a seasonal. And they were super just welcoming. I mean, it really made it feel like home, and especially the housing situation that I got set up with because I just can't get rid of this girl. But Vanessa was also introduced as my roommate, so that has been awesome so far, and it really does make it feel like home. I mean, to have somebody from home, it's just a nice feeling to come back to. Um, so yeah, he just made me promise to not lick any walls in case there was any lead paint, but other than that, it was fine. Um, and we ended our day with some owl survey scouting. So immediately into the field on the first day, which I could not be more thankful for. I think that's a great aspect of working at Bandelier is just all of the field work that they give you the opportunity to take part in if you're willing to do it. And of course, they're super understanding, like if there are any limitations, but like if you're willing to, they will let you do whatever they're doing, which was awesome. I got to get a lot of hands-on experience this summer, especially starting on the very first day. So that's what that picture is of right there. They were surveying for or they were scouting for an owl survey spot where some good habitat might be for our Mexican spotted owl here. And that's specifically in the Valle Caldera, which we have revisited many times and done many owl surveys there since. And so that was a great first day, like immediately out in the field, and I could not be more grateful. So basically, what was running through my head was like, what a cool team this is, and like, I am so excited to get to know these people, hear their stories, and get to share the work that they pour their hearts into. I could see it from the first day, and so it made me really excited to work here. Okay, and now here's Vanessa's first day.
Let's see. So I started a little after Micah. I started on the 27th, which was a Tuesday because Monday was a holiday. So my first week was a little bit of a short week, but that's okay. It was still great. So on my first day, I also got settled in. So I went to meet Cassie. It was actually funny. So Sarah came and picked me up from our housing situation, and we accidentally stumbled into some tea and some pastries and some coffee, just accidentally. But then when we got to the parking lot, I was actually introduced to a lot of people there, and so like right on, like I had to memorize their names and everything, which I think I'm doing a great job at. Um, and so yeah, I got to meet a lot of people. I got a little tour around the park, the visitor center. I also got my PIV card, and I also got some merch. Like I'm actually wearing the same shirt as Micah. Yeah. Let's see. I also got the gear, which was very, I really do appreciate it because I flew in. I don't know if I would have been able to come in through a flight with like that amount of gear and then like my luggage, and then that would have been really expensive. I have absolutely no idea how I would have done it. So thank you so much, Sarah, for that. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, I was also thrown out into the field my first day, which I also appreciate. So we went to go and see a mountain lion kill site. It was a little sad to see just animal in the ground, but it actually reminded me of how it is that I ended up in the wildlife field and what actually piqued my interest. And so I basically just remembered how dissecting animals in high school is really interesting to me. Just like learning how their organisms and like their organs and like how they're arranged throughout their bodies and how each animal is different, how it works different for each animal and how they evolve throughout the years and they adapt to where they're living. And so that was just like a little refresher of why I'm here. Let's see. And then after that, we went to go and set up the songbird banding site, which we will actually be talking about later in the presentation. And so that's where I met Priscilla, and that's where I also met Bob. And that was great. We did some rebars and just making sure that the site was ready for whenever we were going to start bird banding. And then, oh yeah, so during the mountain kill site, I asked Sarah if we were allowed to collect rocks because I collect rocks actually. I have a expanding rock collection. When we went to Oklahoma for Micah's birthday, I found these two huge heart-shaped rocks, and I actually gave one to Micah for her birthday. And so it's just, I don't know, I thought it would be great to just be able to collect rocks like while I'm on the field and everything. So it's limited to only Forest Service land. And I'm glad that I asked. And on the picture, you can see a little fungus beetle, the first little beetle that I met that day in New Mexico. And ever since, I've met a lot of them. And they're really friendly little guys. They're also really cute. And so, yeah, I was also just very impressed by the team. They're very welcoming, very understanding, and just very knowledgeable about what they do. And they are also just willing to share the information that they do know and just um, willing to share those experiences so that you can also get to experience those opportunities. And so I was just like in awe. Like I was just like I don't know. I was just like admired by I can't even explain it. They're just great people and like the work that they do here is amazing. And so that was my first day. Let's see. So BDA workshop. So this was on my first week, and this was your third week. Yes, this was Micah's third week. And so BDA workshops, this was on Wednesday and Thursday. It was actually a 2-day workshop. And so here is where I actually learned what BDAs are. And so they're beaver dam analogs. Yes, I got that right. Okay. And so we basically got to learn about the beaver dams and the basically the positive effects that they have in the environment and how they can contribute to the health of the environment. And we also just got to learn about the ongoing projects that they have. Also, the first time that I um, got to know that there was a Beaver Believer group, which I am actually proud of being part of. And it was just great. The people there were amazing. Got to learn a lot about beavers, and it was amazing. I haven't seen a beaver yet, but I'm looking forward to that later in my life someday. And so, yeah, we got to see what is that makes beaver dams successful and what the requirements are, and just like the research that is currently going on in getting those dams and the influential effects that they have on the environment. And so, for me, from my POV, this was again my first time learning about beavers and actually getting to learn more about them. But it was also Sadly, it was my first time experiencing elevation sickness, and so I got to miss out on the first day. I did get to see the presentation, which was very cool, and so that's where I basically was immersed into the beaver traditions here. And so after that, we were supposed to go out into the field, but I was not feeling great, and so I got to stay in the car. But I didn't really miss out on much because I like passed out. I just like I slept in the car and then it's really funny because I actually woke up like right when they came and I was like, whoa. And so I guess I really needed that rest, but that was my first day experiencing elevation sickness and actually the only day experiencing elevation sickness. Um, and so ever since then, I've just been adapting to the elevation because I'm from Dallas, Texas, so there's not much elevation there. Yeah, there's a little explanation there. And so yeah, I've just been adapting my breathing and like breathing through my nose and not my mouth. It's just I don't know, it was a little weird adapting to the elevation here, but I'm glad that I actually did get to adapt to it, and it was only one day of sickness, so the next day I actually got to join them. And I guess I can turn it to Mike, and she can give her POV.
Yeah, so this was a really great exercise for me to just see wildlife management like in practice. You know, like you learn about these things so much through coursework that you do at your university, but like actually being out in the field is like completely different. And it also really clicked in my mind, like what are we actually looking to restore here? Like whenever we talk about restoration, like what's our end goal? And I thought that that was really well emphasized in this specific training, and that was one aspect of like wildlife management that I got really interested in after that. Like what are we actually going for here? Like is it like historically what it has been? Like or are we aiming for like something completely new and different, like that we know will be healthy for this system? So that was really interesting for me. And also, I was out of my element so much in the best way. I had never worked with beavers before. They were another one of those like elusive guys that like you were really lucky to see out of a car window, like if you went wildlife watching with your family. But other than that, like I had no experience with beavers, but I'm so glad that I got to go to this workshop. It was a really great resource and really like got the ball rolling with our work here. So, one of our pretty consistent practices here is bird banding, and also one of our favorites, I will add. So, we do hummingbird banding and songbird banding. So, as I mentioned before, Bob Loy is our hummingbird bander on site. He's been great so far and just like immediately like took us into his operation, like showed us how things were set up and everything. So basically, and I guess you can see some of the birds that we have here that we've gotten to handle so far. Birds are super easy to work with. I have loved them so far. They've been really great to get hands-on experience. Super resilient, thank goodness. Yeah, so that's been some of our best memories in bird banding. So for hummingbird banding, pretty much you start out with capture, and so you got to find out a way to capture a hummingbird, like one of the fastest animals on the planet. Yeah, one of our audience members here is doing a great rendition. Um, yeah, so Bob has a great capture system set up. They are some of the only organisms in the park that you are allowed to feed, but only in order to capture. And so we put out feeders basically and nets, and that's how it happens. That's how he captures them. Things that look way too quick to be captured. So once you capture them, it is like a human triggered capture, and so you're the one watching and you're taking the clip off of the string and basically like dropping the box on the box of cheese, if that makes sense. But yeah, after capture, we do a lot of recording, all the data that we need for various studies around the state. We also have Rebecca. She's pursuing a study on hummingbirds as well. She was there all the time. So we just got like Coleman size, so beak size, wing chord, how long their wings are from shoulder to tip. Lots of things like that. Like if they were carrying an egg, like what sex, what species, different sorts of things. Got all of the information we needed as quickly as we could because fun fact, hummingbirds need some sort of nutrients every 20 minutes. And so, right after we would work with them and got them captured, we would feed them and release them as quickly as possible. They were great guys to work with. They were never very grumpy, or they didn't ever tell us they were. But yeah, and then it's just set up and takedown. And something really unique to hummingbird banding is that you get to make all of your own bands that you put out. So you get to see like the recaptures year to year, and you can see like other bands that you've made, which is really neat. Just think jewelry making, if you've ever done jewelry making on a teeny tiny scale. Like it's very detail oriented. Bob the bird bander would be a great watchmaker, I've always said. So, yeah, he's been great so far. Yeah, and then songbird banding is much the same thing. The method of capture is a little bit different. Instead of a human triggered release point, it's you just put up a net and they fly into it because they can't see it. And so we have very strict protocols because it's a maps banding site and also just like for humane reasons. But we never let the birds like sit in the net for longer than they need to. We have rounds that go out every 30 minutes, like on the dot, um, so you go and get them out of the net, and then you process them, just like a hummingbird. We go through lots of species that way. With hummingbirds, we only worked with four. With songbird banding, as many as comes through, and it's always different every time. So, you get to really widen your range of knowledge about birds very quickly, like songs that they make, how to ID them, their behavior, all at once. It was great. We also learned some bird holding grips. Vanessa right there is doing the bander's grip, and then me in the top, I'm doing the photographer's grip. Um, Oh, I don't have a picture of it on here, but it's really funny. Bob calls whenever you hold the hummingbirds, you kind of just like rest your fingers on their back, and he calls it the cigar hold. I've never held a cigar, but now I feel like I have. So, yeah, that was kind of like our take on bird banding. Chickens, as I mentioned, agriculture is my background. So chickens are my first love, my favorite animal on earth. I love them to death, but I also appreciate other birds a lot. And this was such a cool experience. As I mentioned before, it was like our very first like hands-on experience with wildlife. So it was really special to me.
For me, I have never worked with birds before, so this was my first time working with birds, and I did actually start to appreciate birds more this last college semester, this last semester of college. They're just really interesting creatures, and like just their behavior and like they just look really like sleek. They're amazing, and so like actually being able to like handle them and like handle them and like see like the behind the scenes on the surveys and the research that they do with these birds has just been great. I definitely loved handling those little hummingbirds. That's like one of the items that's on the table right now for what I want to specialize in for I want to be a wildlife biologist, and so I'm still not sure what I'm going to specialize in. I was thinking mammals, hence the foxes, but who knows? Maybe hummingbirds, maybe oh, I guess we'll talk about it in another slide. So like, but maybe other animals that we've been working with in here. So it's been great here. Yeah. Let's see. So for shorter experiences, so these are just experiences that we haven't done on like on a daily basis. So for the first one there, bear fence. That one was actually pretty fun to do. So we have an orchard in Bandelier, and some of the trees there are growing apples, and so apples attract bears, and so in order to keep the bears away and for their safety and also for our safety, we were actually helping Priscilla put up a bear fence. And I was actually just very relieved that we didn't have to carry like a whole bunch of metal and like use drills and everything, because that's what I was imagining whenever they said, "Oh, you're gonna go and help set up a bear fence." I was like, "Whoa!" So I'm just glad that we didn't do that. But even then, like I would have been um, like enthusiastic to help, even if it was that. And so we basically just flagged the trees just to make sure that we were setting up the fences correctly. And then we actually put the fence, and then we went and we turned it on. And we actually got rained on once, and that was great. I love the rain, so that was like that made my day like amazing. And so then for the invasive plant identification, Mike already mentioned, but Anna and her war with invasive plants. And so basically that's actually, I believe, no, I met Anna on my first day as well. And so we basically had a walk with her. We walked around the park and she basically showed us the different invasive species that were in the park and to look out for. And then for opinion J recorders, that was actually our first day out in the field by ourselves. Well, by ourselves, but like together. And so basically, we were putting out recorders in Burnt Mesa, and basically just to keep tags on the pinyon jays that were there. And that was about a 6 mile hike, which I think was the longest hike that I had done until then. Which again has been preparing me for the hikes that I will be doing in San Clemente Island. And then air quality. So this is actually every Tuesday, every week. And so here basically just analyzing the quality of the air to see if there's any anomalies and basically seeing like with the fires and like with the rain and just analyzing that data to see how the quality of the air is. And for water quality, that's funny because I was actually supposed to hang the mic over to Micah for this one because I hadn't done water quality, but I got to experience water quality today. So I guess I can actually talk about it now. So for water quality, we're basically just tracking the pH, the turbidity, and the conductivity, and basically just assessing the river flow. And it was actually a great experience. The people that we got to work with today were great. They were also very welcoming. Again, the people here at Bandelier and just New Mexico in general are very amazing people.
Yes. Also, just to revisit Plant ID, the longest hike award goes to Anna or Anna. Sorry, and that picture up here on the top, that is evidence of that long hike. That was awesome. That was one of the invasive plant. I'll call them a crusade, to be honest. We were looking for Siberian elm, and it was like going to war for sure. It was awesome. I just love to see her enthusiasm for her job, and that's just a really good like spotlight on what exactly it means to like have passion for your job and have drive. And so that was really cool to see. And so these are some of our like recurring things that we do. We've done these multiple times, and I think that these are some of my favorite activities that I've gotten to do so far. So fish, bats, and owls, lots of different things. So electroshocking and eDNA both have to do with fish. We keep pretty close tabs on our fish populations here. And so I got to experience that through electroshocking, specifically with caldera staff in the caldera and outside. So electroshocking, if you don't know what it is, it's basically just like sending a current through the water, an electric current through the water that stuns the fish, and they'll float to the top or sink to the bottom, depending on the fish, and you'll scoop them up and process them. And so it's kind of like bird banding. You capture and then you take all of the data that you need and then release. So that was a really cool movement to be a part of. He has a lot of volunteer groups that go out with him. So if you're ever interested, it's a super great group to work with, very educational. It's good for people of all, um, I guess, qualifications as well. Like they have everybody, like, and it's all educational. Lots of fly fishermen, lots of little kids, everybody in between. So that was awesome. We got to learn a little bit about the population and get like an overview from that and what they should look like, what diseases look like in the fish here. And Tyler is like a bank of knowledge. So again, if you ever get a chance to talk to him, then he will have lots of interesting things to say. eDNA also has to deal with fish. We did this in Frijoles Canyon, right past the visitor center. So a group came out from the U.S. Fish and yeah, Fish and Game. Um, and they were doing a survey on eDNA for fish. And so, as you know, fires cause landslides and floods. And so there were huge floods in Frijoles Canyon, and it wiped out a lot of the riparian systems and also like clean slate for fish, nothing invasive and also nothing native now. So right now they're just detecting for presence of anything that they can. Um, Specifically, genetics is really interesting because you're looking for genetic markers whenever you turn in this DNA filled water, whatever you're looking for. So you have to pick out specific genetic markers that go with specific species. So you can't just test for everything at once, if you know what I mean. You have to test like for certain species at a time. So during this survey, we were pretty positive that there weren't any trout in there that we had seen. They're pretty evident. You can usually spot them pretty good. But we were looking for chub and sucker. And so basically, the process on that looks like putting a cup attached to a tube attached to a pump in the water that pumps water through this filter in the cup. And then you take the filter off that's got all of the possible DNA on it and send it off to a lab and see if it matches any of those genetic markers. A super great survey, super helpful tool, especially because it's a lot less intrusive than a lot of other surveys can be. In wildlife, it's just a fact of the trade. Like you're going to disturb some habitat while you're out there, but I always love some non-intrusive surveys like this to just, especially detecting presence. It's always good to know to keep inventory like that. Bat netting, that has been super fun. We have a great group that comes out. I'm not sure if they're still out here right now, but they were just recently out here surveying for bats. Also, just kind of inventory and specifically looking for white nose. So they kind of do the same thing. They get their samples for white nose and send it off to a lab and see if it's positive. They work with all different sorts of species. One in particular, his name is Jose. He comes with that group and he is going through like a list of all the small mammals on Earth and like he's trying to catch up to like the leader right now in the world. And so he's always very interesting to talk to. Another lady named Carol, she was great. She was a professor, and so a really great teaching moment, especially for people like us who are super new to this industry. So they also adopted us and fed us Oreos, which immediately won us over. I mean, if you have Oreos, then you know that you can be trusted. So, and one of my favorites is our MSO overnight surveys. Overnights and just MSO surveys in general. You have to do them before dawn or after dusk or overnight in the middle of the night. And so overnight surveys look like a big camping trip with like a super fun supervisor and that really likes chocolate and always brings cookies. And they were really fun. So you get to go out and look for owls, which we were successful in finding. Actually, this picture right here that I have was on one of those invasive plant crusades, I'll call them, with Anna. And it was really cool because I got to see the interconnection between the different, I guess, subdivisions of the park. They really help each other out. Like, Anna's a botanist, but she saw wildlife, and so she's going to relay that information back to the wildlife side of things. And so it was really cool to see that network and how the whole machine turns. Yeah, but the MSOs were super cool. Do you have anything to add to that? Okay.
I'm actually going to do a quick shout out to Micah, Sarah, and Priscilla. Thank you guys so much for putting up with me during that overnight. That was my first overnight, first camping experience. I had never camped in my life, and first time actually carrying an overnight pack, learning how to set up a tent, and like just it was definitely a very challenging hike. And so I just want to do a shout out to them for putting up with me, for being so patient and understanding and just very caring. Um, I definitely took a lot of breaks during that hike. And so I just want to thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Like that, like was what kept me going during that overnight trip. So that was amazing. Also, another thing, something about getting a fish out of water is super special. First time I have also never like done fishing or anything. So that was like amazing. And I'm sure Micah agrees with me. Oh, okay. So we actually have a little video here. The people in the audience will be able to hear. Or we're still iffy in the sound, with the sound here, but basically it's a video that Micah herself recorded here. And so it was over overnight survey. And we're basically just going to see a MSO flying over.
Oh man, maybe the people on Zoom heard it. Maybe.
Okay, so pollinator tabling. Okay, this was a great experience. So this is where we actually got to work with Gianna and her crew. They're amazing. And so basically we had pollinator week. This was last week? Yeah, 2 weeks ago. And so basically a whole week associated with learning about pollinators and being interactive with the public and just basically educating them more about like more pollinators than just bees. And it was amazing. She did a great job planning that. And so we were tasked with the pollinator game table. And so basically we created the pollinator pairing, which Michael will tell you about, and the pollinator's path, which is actually a video game that I made. I did the coding, I did the digital design and everything. Here is actually where my Minecraft fanatics comes into play. So the little bee from Minecraft actually inspired my little character bee, which is basically the main character that you're playing. And so for the video game, you're basically a little bee trying to collect pollen while evading the frogs. And so there's huge frogs, there's a lot of frogs. I thought it was going to be a very simple game, so I made sure to add a lot of frogs, and a lot of people said that they liked it. And I actually have my computer with me, so for those of you that are here in the audience, if you want to take a look and play, you're welcome to do so. And sorry, you guys that are online. Um, Maybe if I know you in person, then maybe you'll be able to play it. But yeah, I did a video game and it was great. I had a lot of fun making it. And it was pretty time consuming, but like the hours flew by. It was very fun. I think I cheated a little bit watching tutorials, but this was my first video game that I've ever made. So I think that little help was necessary. But I did adapt it to like the idea that I had, and I did do the whole like graphics and everything by myself. So I think I did a pretty good job. And Micah herself, she can tell you about the pollinator pairing.
Yeah, if I can just like brag on Vanessa for a second, there were a lot of hours that went into that video game and it turned out amazing. Like it looked very professional. And also like what a cool avenue to reach like kind of an unreached group of people, like to reel kids into wildlife. Like what a great tool to use. Definitely catering to your audience. That is a good example of it. Yeah, but other than our video or Vanessa's video game, we also had a more of a hands-on activity. I used and abused my power to make people feel silly. I made some face masks of pollinators and pollinatees for them to put on, and that game was pollinator pairing. So you were just kind of pairing up the pollinators that looked like they would go to the flower or plant that they look like they would be best at pollinating. I had a few little fact sheets behind them to kind of point them in the right directions, you know, some fun facts too, hopefully to make stick in their mind. Um, it was really fun. I really enjoyed outreach. I think it's not something that at least the interns at Bandelier see very much, except for events like this and that. And it's such an important part of wildlife because, I mean, your stakeholders in wildlife, just like Dr. Chavaria always teaches us, they're so important in the wildlife management process. And that was really cool to get to see like the people that are backing your work and the people that are getting to have access to this wildlife, hopefully through the national park system. Yeah, so that was pollinator tabling. It was a blast. We also had some like snacks to hand out, and I think that was a crowd favorite for sure. Give anybody food, and it's great. We had some nectar that was like pink lemonade and some pollen that was like the honeycomb cereal. It was great. We definitely bribed people to come over to our table. Okay, yeah, so we're finally getting to the end. Are y'all tired yet? I know that I had some caffeine before this. I hope y'all did. So here are just a couple of our big takeaways from this summer. We had a blast working here and we learned some pretty valuable lessons. I've shared a few along the way that I've learned from each part, but here were some of my big ones. The highlight of this trip for me definitely was the people. They just poured into you so much, and I have nothing but good things to say about the people that I've interacted with here. What a great group of people, like Los Alamos as a community, the National Park Service as an organization. Everybody here was so welcoming and like we really did feel adopted. That was like one of the big takeaways from this summer, which was so nice because I mean, academia and research is a hard world. And so it was so kind. Like we definitely saw the kindness and the generosity, and it made this experience really special. And the other highlight for me was surveys, surveys, surveys. Any excuse to work with wildlife, it was definitely one of my favorites. I do love water quality and air quality, but I gotta hand it to it. The surveys, working with like actual organisms was my favorite. And like Vanessa said, like working with organisms that you like actually get to see and handle, like fish, like there is something so special about that and so rewarding. So that was awesome. This has been my first wildlife job, like specifically. I've worked in natural resource conservation before, with specifically water, but this was really unique and gave me a good example of what it is to work with wildlife. Some of my lessons learned were risks and initiative were really rewarded here. I think that was just the effect of a really good support system here and the environment that they um, support, I guess. Um, they they're very encouraging if you are like leaning towards something or like you have the opportunity in front of you, then they're very rewarding if you just go ahead and take it. Like no matter if you mess up, like we're novices at this. Like I know we're young and hungry, but and we know everything, of course, because we're young, but yeah, it was really nice to just be able to have all those opportunities in front of you and to be able to take them. I think this staff specifically like was a really good example of giving all the opportunities possible and all the experiences possible and really being intentional with that with their interns. And also, my biggest takeaway is poison ivy is always better than a rattlesnake bite. I probably don't need to explain that one, but yeah, I'll take the poison ivy any day.
For my highlights, so I agree. The wonderful team and just the experiences here at Bandelier have been great. Everyone that I've met and interacted with and like worked with have been wonderful, and just like how willing they are to share their experiences and their knowledge, and just like being able to have hands-on experience and like being out in the field has just been amazing. Really appreciate that about Bandelier. The other thing, holding fish and hummingbirds, oh my gosh, that's like amazing. Another thing on the table, hummingbirds, fish, foxes, parasites, which I will talk to in my lessons learned. And then lots of rain and hail. Oh my gosh, I love the rain. Like, if I could be drenched in rain, I would be the happiest person in the world. And I had no idea how much hail could look like snow. Like, what? Like, we get hail back in Dallas, but it's like nothing like this. Like, it was great. I loved it. And like that one time that we got rained on, it made my day. Like, it's amazing. I love the rain if you can't tell. Lessons learned. So, one thing that I learned, especially during that overnight trip, being patient with yourself and especially if you're experiencing new things. So, just be patient with yourself as you adapt to those new things that you're being exposed to, like longer hikes or like different temperatures, changes in elevation. Just make sure that you take those breaks, that you stay hydrated and that you eat, and also communicate and listen to your body. Like if you're starting to feel a little like weird, just take a little break, drink some water, and communicate that with the people that you are hiking or are in the field with. One thing that I learned, I'm not sure if this will be helpful to anybody, but it was helpful to me. Having a hat on and my glasses, for some weird reason, like makes me feel really bad towards like the end of the hike. And so for me, if I start feeling weird, I just take off my hat or I take off my glasses, which isn't always the greatest idea because I need my glasses to see. Um, but I also just recently got my glasses, so it's not like I'm totally blind. But yeah, so if you ever start feeling weird, just follow like the regular tips. Be patient with yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself with that. And the other one, just embrace the things that you like, that you're interested in, that you're passionate in. Sometimes whenever I mention I guess, my love for parasites, I know that sounds a little weird. It sounds a little weird. I get weird looks like how, like ticks, fleas, like lice, like what? Like I just find them really interesting. Like how they adapt. I read this one article on parasites, ectoparasites. I believe they did the study on fleas, ticks, and lice, and yeah, no ear mites on Kenya. I believe it was South Kenya, on bats actually. And so they basically found that these parasites were adapting to be able to detect their preferred host. And so their preferred host was actually female bats because they were in the nurseries. And so there's a whole bunch more bats that they were surrounded with. And so there's like much more possibilities of spreading their offspring and everything. So it's just a great opportunity for them to grow in numbers. And so isn't that like so cool? Well, I think that's cool. I think they're really interesting and just like the way that they use like different tactics to adapt and like survive. So, bless you. So even if your interests are a little weird like mine with the parasites, just embrace it and feel free to talk about it and share your opinion because maybe it'll make people laugh, maybe it'll open their eyes to something, see a new perspective. And so that's one of the big things that I learned. Don't be afraid to stand out. And the other one, beef jerky makes a good in the field snack. Fun fact, I had never had beef jerky in my life. So this was my first time actually having beef jerky, and I will say I'm a little obsessed actually. I found this good beef jerky in one of the Friday festivals or concerts that they have here in Los Alamos, and I'm like obsessed with it. I'm gonna have to go and buy some more. But yeah, beef jerky, or if you're not into beef jerky, fruit snacks. Oh my gosh, fruit snacks are amazing. Like they like give you like a little splash of like the fruitiness and the flavor, and it's amazing. Um, so yeah, those were the things that I learned, and I think Micah agrees with me here. But it's been a great time here at Bandelier, and I just really appreciate everyone who has been very welcoming, very nice, and all the things that they've done for us. And you guys are also just very cool people. And your work that you do is also very cool. So just shout out to all of you guys. And okay, so if you have any questions, we can take them now. Any ticks? I have not seen any ticks on me, which is, I guess it's a good thing.
Would like to contradict that. I definitely have.
Well, I personally have not, but I know that people here in New Mexico say that usually you don't have any ticks here, and it's been weird because people have been seeing ticks this summer. So that's that. But I haven't seen any on myself, but I still think they're pretty cool. Oh, really? Pajarito Mountain? Oh.
There. Oh wow, good. Maybe something will come of that.
Is there any other questions in the chat online?
Okay.
Well, thank y'all so much for being so patient with our very long presentation. We had a whole summer to go over, and we really appreciate all of your interaction and engagement. Yeah, thank you so much for coming here and supporting your wildlife interns.
Yes, and thank you again, Vanessa and Micah, for sharing your experiences with tonight. Thanks to everyone who joined us for tonight's talk, both in person and online. And please remember to look out for the quick survey coming to your email. And if you're interested in attending more peak programs, we just published our program schedule for July through September. And again, thank you to everyone that joined us this evening, and have a good night.